Hello, my name's Rob and welcome to Swift Slots. So this video is going to be a little bit of a bitty video. It's a bit of a catch-up really. A few videos back you may have seen that I did a lot of work to my Renault Alpine A110 build. I used to have this car back in 2006 and did some rally racing with it competitively, and it was really good. This isn't that car, this is a brand new car that I've bought recently, but that old car needed a lot of work to get it competitive, and I did all that work and it did quite well. And as I said in the video, I reminisced about that car and I ended up buying this new one because it chanced my hand that I could buy it, so I did. And I did a lot of work with it and got it pretty good. As you saw in that video, it was a bit bouncy and there was a lot of problems with it, just like my old car. But I did actually manage to get this car to go round Crow Valley in 50-something seconds. And I was a little bit disappointed with that, to be fair, because I was really hoping for a sub 50 second. A 49, anything would have been great. But like I said, the motor didn't really work that well. The ends of the motors all chewed up and it started just dripping a gear. I had to change it for the Predator motor, which is a killer motor, but it's too much for this car. So I put a different motor in. I put the Predator motor in it, and and I got it round the track in just over 50 seconds. And I thought there's more in it, but do I really want to pull the car apart even more than I already have done and take away even more of its value? And you guys said to me, just rip it apart and make it everything that it can be. And that's what that video was all about. But I had another look at this car because I wasn't really happy with a 50-something. I wanted a sub 50 second. So I've been back into this car and I've done a little bit more work to it and got it just about where I want it. So what I want to do is I'm going to get you on the bench and I'm going to show you what I've done, and then we'll give you a quick track run and show you the time that it did. Also on the same track, Crow Valley, if you recall a long way back, I told you all about the DS system, the lap counting system that I'd fitted to it. And I may or may not have said that when I went to the last rally race to bring the track up, the whole counting system stopped working again. The year before, I had a different counting system that worked great before I took it to the track, took it to the club, sorry, and it failed again on that weekend, completely shut down, wouldn't work at all, even though it worked perfectly up until that point. And that was really disappointing. So I spent all the money on the DS system, got it all fitted, made a video about it, and then spent 6 months testing it. And it worked perfectly. Never missed a single lap anywhere, at the club or at the home, anywhere. Took it to the hall a few months ago for a big national race, and it failed. Instantly, shut down, wouldn't count any laps, and it was just a nightmare. I couldn't deal with it. I left the track there and went home. The stress level was too much. So I wasn't happy with that, obviously. So I thought about what I could do with the track, and I decided that I would go from a cross-track beam to an overhead gantry style beam, which is fair, in fairness, where the LEDs and the sensors came from. I bought a 6-lane gantry that you might have seen back in the old video, and I was pulling all the components apart, and in the first rendition of the DS system on Crow Valley, I put the beam going across the track, and it, as like I said, it worked brilliantly for 6 months until the day I absolutely needed it to, and it let me down, just like a year before with the old system that I had. So I've taken it on myself now to pull it all apart, and I've changed that cross-track beam to an overhead gantry beam. So what I've done is I've made a whole new gantry, repaired all the work of the little bollards that are either side of the track, and I put an overhead light and the sensor in the bottom of the track. So I made all the gantry for it, sprayed it all up and fitted it in, and it's working again absolutely brilliantly. So time will tell whether that overhead gantry system now works 100% wherever I go, or whether it's still going to let me down at the moment that I absolutely need it. So I'll do is I'll get you on the bench and I'll show you what I've done to this car, and I'll give you the time that it did, and then I will show you the new gantry and I'll show you how I've constructed that, and we can see how that performs going around the track. Okay, so what little extras did I do to my A110 after that original build? Well, I've reduced the gap on the front arches for a start. I've reduced that right the way down. I've also managed to get a little bit of easy body float. And I've also improved the front axle going through the body as well. And I also lowered the guide. So we've now got a really nice ground clearance. So the car now sits with a really nice stance on the front end, exactly as it should do. And like I say, with a little bit of body float as well. So I'll get the body off and I'll show you what I've done. So there we are. So the first thing I'm going to show you, the problem with this body when it before, it didn't have any body float purely because the motor was jammed up tight against the interior here. So what I've done is I've ground it all the way down to just about paper thin underneath those drivers to create the clearance that the top of that motor needed to get a bit of body float. I've also lifted the back end up by about 1 millimetre or 0.75 of a millimetre. I've made this little shim out of plastic card and glued it to the bottom of the body post, and that has just lifted the back end off the back tyres because it was dragging a little bit. The back end was too low and the front was too high, and also the body didn't have any float because it's rubbing up against there. So there's only so much you can do by slackening off screws. There were some intrinsic problems with this body that needed to be addressed. So I've addressed them on this car now with a little bit of work, and like I say, I've now got a little bit of reliable body float where everything seems to be clearing nicely. So the other thing that I've done is I've lowered the front, or lifted the front axle, and I've made these little standoffs to lift the front axle up, and that's pretty much got the front end exactly where I want it to be now. As I showed you before, there it is now on the setup plate. You've got a really nice amount of ground clearance now. I don't know if it's coming through on camera there, but we're basically looking at about 2 mil at the front and maybe 3 at the back at the most. But the back is pretty much standard, but it's absolutely perfect. It's running really nicely, and as you can see, it's just about dragging on the front tyres there, and then when you run it back and forth, the tyres are catching the ground. Not too bad at all. So that's really improved the front end of the car, and obviously I was able to take away the shims and get that guide up as well, and it clears the front arches really nicely. So that's one of the things that I did by revising this whole front end. And the other thing that I've done is I've taken out that Predator motor because it was far too much motor for this car. Fantastic motor, absolutely wicked motor, but it's too much for this car. The power comes in too hard, the chassis couldn't handle it, and you needed to be a bit smoother. It needs to be calmed down quite a bit. So I've put this 18K motor in there, and this is the motor that I've actually pushed the armature forwards on, and it did actually slide forwards to engage really nicely in the back of that gear there. So that actually worked extremely well. So that's what I've done to this car, a little bit of extra tuning. So now I've got a really nice front end, really nice front guide, and a much calmer motor. And with the body put back on, you could now see how much body float I've managed to achieve. And it's all nice and free, and there's no binding or binding up of the wheels or tyres or anything. It's all very happy to float and do what it should be doing, and it's not all tight and all snagged up like it was before. So hopefully that's enough now to do a decent lap. Okay, so this is the design of gantry that I finally came up with after a little bit of thought, and it actually has the light sending LED in the top shining down onto the track here, and right in the middle of that groove is the little light receiver. And you can actually see if I put this piece of paper over here, you can see the LED is shining right over the sender or the receiver that's right in the middle of the track. And the actual construction is made almost entirely from 1.6mm brass wire. As you see, it's there. And then these side plates here are made from what we call copper clad, which is copper covered fiberglass material. And the beauty of this stuff is you can actually score through the copper and create insulated areas. So that's exactly what I've done in here. You might just be able to tell that there are 2 grooves top and bottom here, and that means that I've isolated the center piece of copper through the middle of this plate, which means I can then solder this piece of copper clad to the middle section on there and the middle section on here, isolate this piece of copper clad through the middle, and I can solder the LED on the two halves of the copper, which means then I can pick up my power from here at the end of the gantry and here, which means I don't have to have wires running all the way through the middle of the gantry. And I've got the wires just here going down in through this little tube, which just neatens it up. Now I deliberately left these wires here for detail because I wanted some sort of detail there, and it is quite normal to have cables flapping around all over the place in real life, and then an actual conduit pole running to take the vast majority of the cabling, which is kind of what I've simulated here. So that's the actual basic gantry. Now I didn't actually film the making of this gantry at all, because all it is just a lot of bending wire and tedious soldering to put it all together. It's not very photogenic to do, but I did actually take some pictures of this gantry when it was all in brass, and it looks really pretty. But I deleted the video footage off my phone, unfortunately, so I wasn't able to show it. But it only showed this in brass. It's a pity, but it is what it is. You can see the end result now here. Now in this angle you can actually see the LED shining down from the underside of the copper clad board here, shining down right into the middle of the track. You can also see the wires coming down into the top of this conduit as well. So I'll give you a demonstration now of the gantry counting. I shall press go, and once it's done its start sequence, I shall activate the beam each time. You can see this number here running down, and it'll only beep on the fastest lap. So I'll try and make these progressively faster so we get an audible beep each time. So here we go. Time has started. Go a bit quicker this time. A bit quicker again. On the last lap now, because it's doing a double beep. Finish. So there we are. So you can see the gantry works 100%, no problems at all, and also the distance between the receiver beam and the light beam is 20 mil lower than the original gantry that I took all these components off of. So in theory you've got a stronger light beam on this gantry than where it came from. So I haven't taken anything away, I've only increased it. And I wonder if having the two opposing light beams across the track, we're able to get light coming in from the side and actually making the actual light beam a little less intense, whereas coming down from above like the original was, I wonder with the light being trapped into the groove here, that should in theory shadow out any of the light that might be coming in from different angles. So hopefully it'll work a lot better. I don't know, time will tell. So there we are, this is the new gantry all ready to go, and you'll see it regularly on this track when I run it for other videos. So there we are, I think you'll agree she still runs absolutely brilliantly, and with that time I'm more than happy to leave it exactly where it is. Now there's a lot more I could do with it, but what's the point? I'm happy now with exactly where it is, and that time is repeatable quite easily, and it's not too much of a struggle. And the new motor is a perfect balance for the size of this car and the size of Crow Valley. It's not being overpowered at all, and it's just a nice car to drive now. So I'm going to leave this project right here. Even though there's more I could do to it, I'm happy. And with regard to the DS counting system with the overhead gantry, well, we'll find out how that works in time. Fingers crossed it'll stay 100% reliable and I won't have to revisit it again, but if I do, I'll be sure to let you know. So if you've enjoyed this sort of content, maybe you'll subscribe, and if you could hit the little bell button, that would be awesome. So until the next time, thank you very much.